going to call the meeting to order at 6:03. Sorry, we had a bit of a meeting backup. I have, of course, a few changes. You can delete 10A, the PPE presentation. I was so excited that I scheduled it earlier than the PPE committee asked for it, and they apparently don't want me to see it. You can delete the 10D, the flag policy. That's not ready for prime time. You can delete X10. The doc has been created, but we have just, the policy committee sort of spoke about, let's wait till the next board and they can work on the policy committee created a list of things that need to be reviewed on an annual basis, and we figured it'd be better to hand it to the next board and the next chair to work on scheduling it versus having a conversation about it now when it's going to be a different board. So people may want something different. But it exists for the next chair to have some fun with. And I will very popularly going to move public comment section, public comment on items not on the agenda to that little spot before the 3 executive sessions. You get all that? There's going to be a quiz later. Any other changes that anybody needs to make? Frank?
Were you able to reorganize the sequence, or do you need to talk about that?
I don't think I need to for executive session, because we could go into an executive session en masse and we'll invite y'all in, and then assuming all the parties are here.
I was talking about the academy discussion.
Oh.
Were we going to try to get Tori out of here earlier than later?
Oh, let me see, where is that? I thought about that.
9A.
9A. So if it is okay with the board, how about we move up the academy project to, how about after approval of the warrants before committee reports? Does that work?
And can I just tell you, if you're a new board member or a returning board member, I have your oath of office. I'm going to bring those around to you. If you could just sign them and put your town name in. So that's what I'm doing, wandering around.
Thank you. Time for her to go. She's just wandering around. With that, sorry, Sean?
I'm sorry, I probably missed it. You did the sign-up sheet for the guests?
They're already floating about. There's 2 of them.
And make sure that town is put.
Yeah, I was going to get to that when I welcome recognition. I have it on my list.
Sorry.
No worries. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of February 26, 2020.
So moved.
Thank you, Tim Morris. Is there a second?
Second it.
Thank you, Thomas Nolan. Any discussion about the minutes of February 26th?
Sorry, go ahead.
There was a mention that I was going to distribute David's resolution to Sarah Coffey.
Oh, yeah.
But David did them all.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I did all of ours, our local people, yeah.
yeah.
So long as
So
we're
I
done.
You can send it again.
No, I didn't do it. I sent you the email address.
Any other corrections?
Very minor, but Jamie asked me after the, I had sent her the minutes, and she said that she wanted to add it that she had welcomed the board on behalf of the Putney PTFO.
Fair
I
enough.
didn't get a chance to add that before sending it back.
I thought I got that. I'm sorry.
I didn't see
So
it.
what
but-
can you send me an email with that, please? Thank you. Then I'll correct it.
Any other changes to the minutes, aside from Tim Morris's? All those in favor of approval of the minutes of February 26th as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Recognition of visitors. Hello, everyone. There is a sign-in sheet going around. If you could put your town on it, and if somebody new comes in, if we could all just look out for our neighbors, and if somebody comes in late, could you get folks to sign it? Because we've had people come in late, and then we don't have them on the record. We don't know who spoke. So it's very helpful if you could do that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I address I want people to write legibly. I don't need your signature. I don't care. What I need to know is what your name is. So if you could make sure that it's printed legibly, that would be really helpful because it's for a legal document. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. It's a statutory requirement, so I appreciate that. Jody.
Jody Normando Dummersted. I just wanted to comment on the ballots. Then particularly for the ballots that were at town meeting.
So this is out of order because it would be under the non-agenda items, although you could conceivably, if I'm
Okay, I'll
in a
wait.
good mood, we could wait until we talk about it would actually fall under town meeting school discussions.
Okay, thanks.
Back to my welcome. As is our practice, I take comment on any agenda item before we move on, but sometimes I get distracted, so wave furiously. I'm used to teaching 7th grade, so jump up and down and wave, and I will not be judgmental of you if you want to comment on something. I take board comments first, supplemented by administrators, because they're the ones that can very much inform our discussion, but the board will always take input from the public. So wave if I somehow miss that in my urge to get people home on time. Communications, I'll whip through mine quickly because maybe it'll help people recollect ones they've had. I had a communication from the union. I had a communication from Kelly Dias about Robert's rules. I had a discussion that I initiated with one of our new people that were elected about Robert's rules and things, which has made me think it might be good for us to do some training for people coming on who don't have experience and for leadership councils. That's a parenthetical. I had an email from Kelly Kalansky asking for an update on our POW flag situation, and an email and email I forwarded, but I also had a discussion with Franz Reichman from the Brattleboro Town Finance Committee about their report and about the future of that process. Those were mine, and a million others from you that don't really rise to this occasion. So. Any other communications that the board should be aware of? Moving on to finances. I would entertain a motion to approve the warrants of February 3rd in the amount of $749,978.05, February 10th in the amount of $193,351.73, February 18th in the amount of $300,865.63, and from February 24th in the amount of $367,622.32, as well as the payrolls of January 31st in the amount of $1,067,357.96, and from February 14th, $1,280,666.14, all of which have been approved by the Finance Committee.
So moved.
Thank you, Emily. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Thomas, for the second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the warrants as listed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. And so we are going to now move into an update on the Academy project with Frank presenting project goals and green building strategies with Stevens and Associates.
Okay, I'm going to very quickly turn it over to Corey for C with Stevens and Associates. This is a follow-up to our last board meeting. I'll just repeat the motion that was approved. Motion is that the administration engage Stevens and Associates to contact the Putney School, the Building Green manufactured building contractors for alternative design examples that meet the needs and requirements of the Academy project and maximize environmental and fiscal advantages. So just as a reminder, then there was a second motion for the board to pursue the next steps in the Academy School project, which is to prepare for a public hearing on a bond vote. So we have followed through with that, and we're very pleased that Corey was available to respond as quickly as he has in essentially taking the next step. So we needed to inform you of our progress on that, and keeping in mind that we're looking for consensus from the board and clarity from the board on, as we move forward, that we have a clear sense of the board's goals. We've created some resources to help facilitate that discussion, and hopefully at the end of this, we do have a clear sense of next steps. So that's a quick summary.
Great, thank you.
So can I turn it over?
Yeah, Corey Frazee with Stevens and Associates. I'm a civil engineer and a principal there. Diana Bade, who was here with me last time, is the licensed architect who did the project. She wasn't able to be here tonight, but I think I can move the conversation forward adequately with you, and I think there's probably another discussion where we bring others back in. So quickly, we've reached out to the Putney School, at least one contractor, and Peter Yost, who I have a working relationship with and who used to be at Building Green. We could also reach out to Building Green. We can talk more about why I think Peter might be a good fit for this. And unfortunately, I haven't heard back from those folks yet. It's only been a few days. So we are moving that discussion forward to get their input, to talk about alternative systems. I think we're fortunate in this valley that we have a lot of companies that have alternative systems. Ford Panel also comes to mind, and we could go on and on with other resources that we can tap into. I wanted to add that alternative building systems, wall types, wall sections fit well within the feasibility work that we did. We can build off of the feasibility study, and as we get into the next steps of design, we absolutely would envision looking at building systems that meet with the project goals. So I don't know that tonight's discussion and update to you is linear, but I'll do my best. We have some handouts that I'd like to go through with you at least quickly. We would like to, as part of updating you, talk about project goals. I think that we could study this indefinitely, and to make good use of our time and everybody's resources to get some direction from you, which perhaps is finalized at a following meeting, so that we can complete the next step of having these conversations with other organizations and bring back to you some concise material that would help you finalize the next steps or the path forward. And I'll go back to Peter Yost. I think that he would be a great person to bring in to help finalize some project goals specifically as it relates to energy. Sorry, Peter, I haven't heard back from you. Put you on the spot on television. So I think I'll circulate these goals now. And we worked with Frank and Lyle to just come up with a draft. And if you could pass those around. I've got a 6-page handout. So this is a draft of goals that I think responds to what I've heard in discussions to date. And then there's some discussion about energy efficiency specifically. And I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll quickly kind of walk you through that and then see if there's questions and whether we want to continue this discussion at another meeting. So the goals that we've drafted, that we would be looking to you to kind of finalize, but rather than starting with a blank page, I hope it's okay we took a crack at this. The first two are talk about meeting the students' needs. The third is about financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility, and balancing the finances of this project with the energy piece and the sustainability piece is going to be a challenge. Although, again, I'll go back to our feasibility study. I believe we included a budget to do a high-performance building. And then the last two goals address sustainability and energy efficiency. And one of our proposed action items, not necessarily tonight, is that we think it, at some point, to choose a building standard rating or certification system to work towards would be a good strategy. And in the Finance Committee, we quickly talked about a couple projects that started out working towards one of those certifications. They didn't necessarily achieve that certification, but it provided the path to a high-performance, highly energy-efficient building. So, just fly through the top of page 2 at least. Quickly touches on several different of those industry standard certification systems. Just start with the basic Vermont Energy Code. It's worth pointing out that that is higher than most national standards. And then we believe the Academy School project is going to require an Act 250 permit. And therefore there's something called stretch guidelines. So the state of Vermont has added on additional energy requirements for projects to come under Act 250. And so that is a higher standard already. And the BUHS garage, which is under construction right now, which I believe everyone on this board is familiar with because that came through about 6 months ago, that's being built to the stretch code. Then you also have net zero. Net zero is interesting because it looks at net energy consumption for a project or a property. So if you're offsetting your energy consumption in some way, you can still be considered net zero, but it may not mean your building is all that highly energy efficient. You've got LEED certification. There's 4 breakdowns, 4 different thresholds for LEED. And just to give you an idea, based on other similar projects, we think you're looking at a 10 to 20% cost premium for LEED. And then passive house is also a common standard, and that could exceed 20% of additional cost. The following 4 pages are a document that I found to be a fairly neutral and comprehensive document about building standards and certifications. And it was cool to see that Building Green was quoted on the first page. That's, again, one of the organizations that you would like to talk to. They talk about 600 different product certifications and over 100 in the US. So there's a lot to sort through when it comes to choosing a path for energy efficiency. It has on pages 2 and 3 just a lot of language about building certifications. If I pointed you to the 4th page of that document, it has a table which tries to compare LEED to net zero to passive house to another standard that Stevens and Associates hasn't ever pursued, but this green standard, which I think is the standard that other certifications come from. So the last page talks about life cycle cost, and we touched on this in the Finance Committee. And this is not new, but it's identified as an emerging issue in green building. So looking at life cycle costs as a part of this project is a really valuable way for all of us to think about the appropriateness of decisions when it comes to the construction. And that is something that we would recommend you incorporate into the next steps of the project. Back on page 2, we brainstormed some things that you could include for procurement of the final design. Stevens and Associates hasn't been hired for the final design. We've finished our feasibility study. We wanted to offer to participate in a couple of these goal-setting meetings pro bono. We've talked to Frank and Lyle about that. Once we get some direction from you, if there's some work to do to talk to other organizations and to come back to you with some concrete information, that would be great to be engaged on, but we're kind of in this, we're exploring next steps. I could talk all night about this.
If I could also just add, you may already recall our discussions earlier on the sequencing of the project, but as Corey is alluding, traditionally it would be setting goals, understanding where our consensus is around one of these standards, and then asking our architect to incorporate those standards in a schematic design. The schematic design phase is what's going to define those general cost premiums and whether or not the board feels they can afford that. And that precedes the final design. The final design is where we have a bid package that goes out to the public and we get general contractor responses. But so what Corey's really underscoring is how important it is in the work that we do in these next few weeks that it responds to the board's interests, because to engage these resources obviously costs money, and we want to be going in the right direction. So it's did I get that right in terms of?
Yeah, and we could talk more about design process if you want, because schematic design is really the meat and potatoes of where we're going to flush this out, and we're going to find that balance of finances with energy efficiency. But to have some goals and some direction now is absolutely appropriate and important.
Okay, I could listen to you talk all night about saving energy and green building standards, but I'm not sure everybody else feels that way. So I'm looking for suggestion from somebody on the board about the best way to go forward and what their thoughts are. I mean, it'd be lovely to come out of here tonight to have people say what we meant by green was low energy consumption. Or, this is, and if we all had a mind that really directs us in terms of one of these standards, but.
Well, let me say that I have some proposed steps that you could consider. So if you wanted me to throw out kind of 3 proposed action items, I think you've received some information that you should digest. I think that if there's consensus around setting some goals that will provide direction, that we should come back to that, and I understand your next meeting is actually scheduled at Academy School, so maybe that would be the right time to do that. And I think that I need some more time to hear back from these people that I've reached out to, and specifically, what I think is really important, this is a niche, this is a specialty, and Stevens and Associates has brought in an energy consultant on their last 2 projects, and so if the goals go in this direction of being a high performance building, that if we were presenting a proposal to do final design, we would have an energy consultant on our team. But we have some local people in this community who would bring more credibility to the discussion that I would be interested in inviting to that next meeting to finalize these goals, to make sure we didn't miss something, right? And whether that's Peter Yost or Alex Wilson from Building Green. I've been on a panel with Peter, so I just know that he and I would have a good kind of dynamic in that discussion with you guys. But so that would be one thing that I'd be looking for your feedback on tonight, but that would allow us some more time to move this along.
So the one caution I will give you is that some of these seats will be changed and there'll be a new bunch of people coming in for that next meeting, but many of them are here tonight. I haven't actually done a head count, so they're not, we'll make sure they get copies of this so they'll be up and running. That sounds like a good way to go. I know that time is of the essence, but to me it seems like a good way to go so that people can sort of read through this and have an opportunity to hear from somebody who specializes in that. And so I'd like to hear from the board what their thoughts are, like head nods.
So to go over what the information we got here, and then just at the next meeting, talk with everybody and have a final.
Come up with what it is that we mean by green, because green can mean lots of things to lots of people.
Yeah, I can't speak for everybody. I think for me, I was thinking, obviously the energy consumption, and that the materials were responsibly sourced and sustainably sourced. That's what it meant to me. I don't know about other people. And it's, I guess, the building's impact on the surrounding area, but I don't think that if it's a basketball court right now, it's probably not that probably won't be an issue. Mainly materials and energy consumption.
Mm-hmm. And so LEED is a good metric to use for measuring how are we doing with sourcing materials. And then most of the certifications touch
on energy use.
Anybody else want to throw out an initial thought, because maybe it helps direct also who comes if you're hearing overwhelmingly lead versus energy efficiency, maybe. Sean?
Sean Murphy, I could say that I built for a living for years and years and years and years, and there's always what you want to do is maintain or achieve the best thing that you can for the amount of money that is expended. And when you start to concentrate on saving money in terms of energy efficiency, it's like a bell curve. There is a place where you're going vertically in money expenditures where you're not really gaining that much in terms of long-term energy gain. So I think it's very important to maintain a financial reality in the same time that you're considering any kind of new building. So I know that you talked about the SIPS building. I mean, I've been in such a building, and I wonder how the integration of this, and maybe this is getting ahead of today's conversation a little bit, but how you integrate a SIPS building with the requirements of, fire protection and safety and all that in a commercial building. There might be some serious considerations to achieve using that material and also achieving the state mandated safety goals within a building. So it's a balancing act, as I see it, and I think the bottom line is that this is going to have to be a bond vote, so it wouldn't be difficult to, make a presentation to the public that because of a financial overview is too much and then the bond doesn't pass. And I know that the needed academy is a real-time need. So, it's like walking on a knife edge, or, and taking medications, and you want to keep the sweet spot. It's difficult to achieve. But I appreciate what you bring forward.
We call it point of diminishing returns, like you said, when you're vertical on that bell curve. Yeah. We did do the public building up at Hilltop Montessori with Ford panels, so that was a SIPS panel that was put into a public building. We figured out that challenge of fire protection and such. Durability is another part of the conversation, and maintenance is part of the conversation. So again, we're getting a little ahead of tonight's discussion perhaps, but we've got, I think, like 80,000 square feet of an existing building type at Academy School with a brick veneer, and we've got a 2,000 square foot addition proposed. And so we need to have a discussion about whether we introduce a different building type there and what that looks like for maintenance, durability, and consistency of building materials.
Just one question, so the NZEB portion?
That's the net zero.
Okay.
No.
I mean, I can look it up on my own, but some of their requirements seemed inspirational. So, I mean, like, it says limits of growth, net zero energy, rights to nature, beauty and spirit, inspiration, and education. I don't know, beauty and spirit, inspiration, and education, that sounds amazing. I don't know what that means for, like, a standard. Do you know a little bit more about, I mean, I can do my own research, but I didn't know how that came into the green conversation, but I was like, oh, maybe my definition should be expanded.
Yep.
I want it to be beautiful and I want it to be inspiring, but I don't know.
Educational, sure.
Yeah, educational,
Yeah,
definitely.
wouldn't hurt that.
Maybe it'll be pretty too. Okay, I can look it
Yeah,
up though. Cool.
So, any other,
Yeah, a couple of us. One, this is great. I really like the idea of us talking about identifying, I really like that there are standards so we can reach a consensus about what our goal is. It seems like a really good place to start. And also, thank you for bringing these descriptions so that we can take the time to look at them. I haven't read as much as Emily did, so I haven't found
And
it
this
inspirational.
website is, you could go
Yeah.
for days on this website, so it's
I'm
a
not
good
gonna.
resource.
I'm not gonna do, but this is a good start. Also, it's reassuring to hear you mention Pete Yost, who was on the Brattleboro School Board for, I think, 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And whose youngest child voted for the first time yesterday, so I know he's in town. But he's hard to get because he's a consultant now, he's around a lot. But I think Frank mentioned Alex Wilson, who Building Green generally recommends to work on these things. There's also the New England Sustainability Energy Association of Greenfield that Sion here in town is associated with. And I think among the 3 of those, I think it's not going to be hard to find a, I forget what's.
Energy consultant.
An energy consultant, yeah, somebody to help us with that. And to help us understand, I mean, we can all read about this, but to help us understand what that it sort of means in lay terms. And a couple questions about the architect and the schematic. That's after we tell them what we want in terms of the range of materials, what shape we're thinking about, or maybe even have 2 small buildings instead of one big one, depending on on all the other considerations, whether you use panels or not. We need to decide all that before we give it to the architect to make this?
At least our recommendation, and I think the best way to move this particular project forward, is that we have a high level of confidence that we have a viable project. We have a project budget, right around $1 million.
That's your budget. We haven't.
Fair enough, but we have real cost data. This went to a professional cost estimator. We've done the programming. We've established the need of the sizes of the classrooms and the renovations as well. Let's not forget there's a renovation piece of this. And we have a high level of confidence that this budget would suffice for the needs of the school. And I've just passed around a second handout. It's titled 2015 CBES, CBES as we call it. That's the stretch, the Vermont stretch energy code guidelines. We anticipated that as part of this feasibility study. So we did pick a building type. It is a pretty good energy efficient building type. It's got exterior insulation. And I forget what the complete wall section looks like, but we have a viable project. So the next step, after there's goals and a direction for the board, would be to procure the architect for final design, and then to get into schematic design with that firm. And during schematic design, they should be pursuing alternatives and bringing them back to you for final decision. But let's say they come up with 3 building sections that they feel like will meet your goals, but they're going to come at different cost premiums, and have a discussion about, this one will be LEED Platinum, but it's going to cost 20% more than I don't know, some other building section. And then I'm being neutral here, but you've got 3 building sections at 3 different costs. So David, you wouldn't be expected to choose those prior to hiring the architect, and the architect will be leading that conversation. We think you should have an energy consultant that's, the advocate for the project, working with the architect, helping to advise on those decisions.
And just to be clear, energy consultants generally get paid.
Yes.
Yeah, so we would be hiring an energy consultant to work with the architect that we'd be hiring as well. Okay. And that's really the only difference.
Could be required as part of the consulting team. It's done, that's commonly done nowadays. The commissioning, which actually I think we made a bullet point, the commissioning we suggest is by owner, because when you're commissioning all of these mechanical systems that have such a big piece in energy efficiency, it's nice to have that that entity working directly for you as an independent third party.
Okay. Take your word for that. I have no idea. So I think that's all my questions. Thank you. That's great.
Anybody else have a question, thought, or comment?
Well, just one quick question. There are going to be a lot of infrastructure that has to be built in somewhere in this building for the HVAC and the heating and all those different things. So is that something that's already been laid out in what you've already given us to an extent?
Yep, it was explored. We actually consulted, we pulled in a mechanical engineer and electrical engineer. We reviewed the current systems at the school with them to again, make sure we had a viable solution for the HVAC needs of this addition and of the renovation space as well. And that is included in the budget.
And all the required, state required protective things like
Yep.
door types. and-
Yes?
And
Yes.
sprinkling and all that stuff,
Mhm.
everything, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, we did a comprehensive code review as part of
Yeah.
this.
So we have a good foundation, it sounds like.
Yes, again, we have a high level of confidence. There are contingencies in here, so, you know, I would say that this budget kind of is for the Vermont stretch code, which, you know, I would encourage you that if we hire a consultant, Kristina, I really like the way you said it in the finance committee meeting, you know, that we look at life cycle costs and that we identify places where we can go above and beyond. But I think the Vermont stretch code is going to be your basis, and you're going to be very happy with the energy efficiency that you find from that building.
So if you missed finance committee, one of my thoughts was that there are things that you can do that they might say, oh, there's a 7-year payback on this, but we're gonna have that building for more than 7 years, so look at, well, will this last 12 years and what the long-term cost is of something, as opposed to doing what, I mean, if you do this with your house, they'll say, oh, don't do it, it's a 5-year payback and that's too long, but that depends on how you look at it, really, what's too long and what your priorities are. So I agree that there is a curve, and we have to figure out where on the curve we are and what our return on investment should be. And I think the other thing that I won't be here to make these decisions, but you referred to something called papering, which is going after some of these certifications, and somebody in town was going after a certification, but the cost of actually getting the plaque on the wall was going to be a lot. And I think from my perspective, I would rather have us invest in actually technologies that will improve the building performance than the attractive plaque on the wall, because we're not marketing a destination resort, we're serving students and modeling. So I think we should be mindful when we're talking about these standards. Maybe we go to the standard, it's built to a LEED standard, but maybe we don't want to pay for the LEED certification process. I mean, that sounded like what you were saying is an option. You get almost there, but maybe there's a piece that is not, maybe there's something we would have to comply to that would not have a good ROI. So to be thinking about having that kind of flexibility in what we're doing going forward. So, and maybe we could invest somewhere else that you wouldn't get recognition for, but it absolutely makes sense for the situation of a building where we don't occupy it hardly in the summer, you know. I mean, maybe that would, you know, there might be different circumstances, so. Yeah, Sean?
Would you be the shepherd to get us to a place where we knew as we go along that if we choose this, you know, the cost is going to escalate beyond a point of comfort?
Yes.
Because that's easy to do, you know, choose things. And if you have a vision of where that choice will get us in a financial realm, I think it'd be very helpful to have that sort of check, so that, you know, we do as much as we can with the money available.
Yes. Well, I should rephrase. I very much hope that we are. You know, that is going to be your architect. And that architect is going to be working in consultation with hopefully an energy consultant, a mechanical engineer who has a lot of expertise in this field. Efficiency Vermont is a free consult on these projects, so they're another resource that can be easily and at no cost brought in to collaborate. And perhaps there's a contractor involved at some point. But again, going back to that schematic design process, that's where we see really digging into this and having those discussions.
Okay, if I could follow up, you know,
it's very logical that you would have the same firm that does the schematic design be the final design architect. As far as that decision, that would be another decision point for the board. You know, and it sounds like if the conversation moves the way we've just described it here with maybe on the 18th, March 18, we fill out the discussion around, you know, you've had a chance to absorb some material, we hear from some of these other resources. It wouldn't be too long after that I would be recommending that the board consider hiring the architect to get us to those next steps. And you know, we'll see what the conversation looks like on the 18th if the board is thinking that's a good time to do this.
And David had one follow-up.
Yeah, just I want to be really clear that Efficiency Vermont can be helpful, but they are not energy consultants, and they don't advise you. They tell you what they think. They help you out with your ideas. So I wouldn't want to have Efficiency Vermont become our energy consultant. I would want to have somebody that is really going to get us where we want to go once we figure out where that is.
And that's not the intent.
Great, thanks.
So it sounds like the board members that will continue to serve are asking that for 318 that Corey will return, bring some backup singers for your presentation, and the board will have done their homework, and new board members will have done their homework and read about and got somehow, do you have a digital copy of this packet you could send to me?
I do,
Okay.
yes.
So that I can make sure that the oncoming board members can start doing
Yep.
homework
And you can
beforehand.
send it on to all of us, so we can send it on.
And
to
again,
the
those goals were
college.
intended to be a
Okay.
draft. I think I even put a watermark on it. I can send those along as a Word document.
Just
so
keep the
you guys-
watermark on it, that's a good idea, yeah. Whatever, we're pretty good at,
So we'll post it on the website as well.
oh, great, fabulous,
That's easy.
awesome, thank you. So I see nods of agreement that that's going on the next agenda. I see at least 4 nodding heads, so that makes it warm. Excellent. Thank you oh, I'm sorry, let me just, yes, Jody.
Both of these handouts will be on the website.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other quick public comments on this agenda item? I want to thank you so much for this really thoughtful presentation that you put together really quickly. And if you know me, you know I really want to thank you for offering to do a little bit of pro bono work for us too.
Our pleasure. Yeah.
So-
Thank you for moving me up the agenda.
Well, thank you. Hey. Thanks again. Moving back to committee reports. Sean, you want to take it away with just a
Yeah.
little brief highlights and?
Sure. The Finance Committee met this afternoon at 5 o'clock, and we did a couple of things, warrants and payrolls, approved the minutes, and then we did another agenda item that we didn't have time to get to, was prepping for the budget meeting on 3/10, but we'll probably do that in this meeting. And then Frank gave us a fiscal year-to-date financial statement review, and we went over that. And then right at the end of the meeting, Corey was able to make himself available at 5:45, and so he gave sort of a preliminary of what we just went through with Corey right now, and that was about it.
And so maybe I'll talk about the Franz Reichman report down
Oh,
later.
yes, thank you
I'll talk
very
about
much.
that down maybe when we're talking about budget prep. That might be a good place to put it.
Okay.
Did Frank just leave?
He was just walking Corey out.
It's just,
Oh, okay, because I would love to hear the up to the financial statement to this point.
Yeah.
How we
Yeah,
doing?
he had a
We're
handout.
concerned about a deficit, so.
Wow,
a
it's
handout.
early yet. I have
And
it.
he went through the whole handout.
Yeah, I know, but not with us. I don't know.
I'm getting
I don't know
it
any
to
of it.
you.
And we're be presenting a budget.
Here. Well, this is the current year, so there.
This is all, everything that he handed out?
Yeah.
No,
let's
this is
look
the
at-
budget, right?
This is the year-to-date budget.
That's an expanded version of this, so that you could
Oh, I
actually
see.
look at each.
This is the
item.
backup.
Okay, yeah, we've had this before.
He had a
So-
summary, and then he had the whole,
And
Yeah,
what was
big
the,
package.
I guess what I'm asking, what was the summary? Are we like overspent at
summary
this
was
point for 9
just
months?
where we are now, but it also includes all the encumbrance figures, so things that anticipated, like in the in the payroll, the figure represents what it'll be on June 30th. So, you know, he didn't, I think probably because they're unknowns, I don't think he made a specific recommendation, but it, you know, he gave us all the information.
I'll ask him, maybe we can just come back to this for a second. Because I'm just curious, we're 9 months, you know, 3/4 of the way through the year, and we know pretty much what our unless something comes up that's a surprise, we know kind of what our spending is gonna be.
Well, I think
And I'm
that's,
just curious as to where we are in terms of what we budgeted as opposed to what we spent.
that's
as of 9
exactly
months.
why, that's why he gave us these materials.
I think when Frank comes, let's ask
Yeah.
Frank his, because I think
We're
he
talking
might,
about each
yeah,
other.
yeah, he'd be the one that would say, I'm worried, I'm not worried. And we didn't ask that question, we went, oh, okay. Yeah. Personnel Committee.
She is not here.
Okay, so skip right over that.
But we did have a meeting.
Oh, okay, then you can do it.
We had 1% that we approved. And it was for a science teacher from Putney to go to the National Science, what do you call it?
Congress.
Say it again.
The NSTA?
Right, the National Science Teacher Association, which is in Boston. And we set dates for 1% to be due, so May 1st will be the date that 1% need to come from teachers to be due to principals. Principals will vet them, get them to Barb. Barb always does the financials, makes copies, sends copies on to board members to preview, and then we'll need at least 1, probably 2, even 3 meetings, because in the past, of course, each individual board did their own. We'll be looking at far more 1% requests. So our goal is to have them all done and approved and wrapped up by June 15th. So
That's a question for personnel. I think you can probably answer it. In the January 22nd meeting, is that the most recent one, or you met since then? It doesn't matter. In the January 22nd meeting, I noticed that the committee approved a long-term leave for someone.
yes.
And I'm curious as to, I mean, I didn't know that a committee could do that. I thought if someone wanted long-term leave, the board had to do that.
So did we report out on that? Because I am sure.
It's in the minutes, but I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't recall either. If the board would like to approve it, I can talk in generalities about who and what and why.
Well, I think it's more of a question of just, I mean, it makes perfect sense for the personnel committee to do that. I just don't ever recall us saying that. And when something appears that I've never seen before, because you have given us, well, weren't leaves, but a lot of retirements. You've given us a lot of retirements, but this is the different thing.
Right, right.
That's a good question. I know we gave them the approvals of 1%. I don't remember leaves.
Leaves.
And I can't think of why not, but just,
Not
you know,
since I've been
it doesn't mean
taking
anything if I can't think of it.
That hasn't come up since I've been taking minutes.
I think that
for
was,
long-term leave.
Yeah, I do remember we were at Oak Grove School when we discussed it.
Yeah, it was one of Mary's people.
Yeah, it's one of
Kristina? I'm trying to remember what we put in the mission statement.
I know, that's what I was just
Is that
trying
what
to
you're
look-
looking at?
that's what I was trying to
It didn't
look
have
up.
that.
It didn't have
It was
that
1%, it was
specific? Okay.
something, the language, there was some language about negotiations, and
yeah.
that was then altered to say something else, but
Okay.
it was a very brief mission statement.
And so maybe we could consider that, if that would make sense.
Just to, you know, to formally say that's a good idea for personnel to do.
So would you like to make a motion?
That we look at it, or that we ask them to add it to their,
We authorize the Personnel Committee to approve long-term leaves?
did you get that?
That was David's motion.
That was David's motion.
Oh, to authorize personnel committee to approve long-term leaves, right? By David. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving David's motion to authorize the Personnel Committee to approve long-term leaves, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Ayes have it, the ayes do have it. Oh, see what happens when you're away, Kelly. We can put more work on you.
More work for Kelly.
Okay.
Actually, we don't have very many members,
AP committee, oh, that's mine, I was skipping ahead, how about that? We met Monday morning, we've met twice since the last meeting, is that correct? Yeah, we've met twice since the last meeting. We've been looking at creating a sexual assault policy. We've been working on, and that's taken the bulk of our time, we've been working on a flagpole policy, had some discussion. We're gonna have to meet with an attorney on the phone because this is a complex Title I issue that we're going to walk very carefully on, but we've sort of talked about the committee's concerns and issues and sort of had a preliminary discussion so that we can actually have a cost-efficient conversation with an attorney, that we know what our concerns are, we know what our interests are, and then we can find out what the law has to say about it. And then David very wonderfully created a list of annual updates that are embedded in policy that we're supposed to do, and unless you read through the whole policy book, it's hard to know. So just to pull out from that to say, if it says the superintendent will inform the board annually, and it's always somewhere tucked into a policy. So he came up with a list of things, and I would also like to publicly thank Tim Morris for saving my butt on the sexual assault policy, because I think I wrote him on Sunday night.
Metaphor.
No, that was a bad metaphor. You're trying to get through this position without doing that. But there was a lot of legal stuff in there, and I'm like, this can't be right, this can't be right. And so I chose the right person to be to be the one that helped in that committee, because he's like, nope, that's what it says, Kristina, that's what the law says, and then really did the bulk of the backbone writing, and I just did the nerdy laundry list stuff. So it was a really big help for somebody who's just supposed to be my proofreader, and he really stepped up. So I appreciate that personally. So I sent the first copy out of that for a read, so we're gonna just, there's nothing really to talk about in a first read, but I wanted to get it fleshed out so we can run it by an attorney. And Sean, you already sent me edits, thank you so much. But if you'd all take a look at that, but it'll be later in the agenda. And is that pretty much it? Policy and amendment? Excellent.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah, we were there for 3 hours, on Monday, so. And I did, Kelly Kalansky had communicated to me like what's going on with that, and I said we have been crushed behind getting some other things done, and we have to schedule time to talk to the attorney, and it didn't happen this past meeting. So I told her it may not happen before the 18th, but it was still on our radar. So Climate Crisis Task Force.
So we finally got a time that worked for everybody. The meeting is going to be, hold on, let me double check. Tuesday, March 10th. Where's that going to be? Oh, that's at the main office at 4 p.m. And then after that, every month we're going to have the same time, same place, so it's more predictable. Yeah, that's it for now.
And while you're commending, I don't know how to describe what Tom said to go through to get this done. He's got 2 committees with 4 or 5 people, all with really complex schedules. And I don't know if you have your email system. Every time a message comes along, there's a line that goes down to it, and the lines go across the way as it becomes a long chain. But he pretty much filled the page with lines, trying to get us to figure out what time on a Tuesday, we give them which Tuesday.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing.
Very exciting.
So we're through it. What time? Oh, nobody.
4
p.m. 4 p.m. We're going to have
Just under.
every second Tuesday of the month, 4 p.m., so people can sign on it.
Nice. I mean, it might be an interesting thing to talk about the building, the academy project a
Yeah,
little bit.
that's,
It's right up-
we'll add it to the agenda.
Yeah. Just get some other opinions. Excellent.
Yes.
Can you, sorry.
Did you skip PPEC?
Oh, I did. Oh my gosh, how
That's
did I
okay.
do that? PPEC, sorry.
We haven't met.
It'd be a short meeting.
No, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that we are meeting next Wednesday at 5 p.m. at the library. And that'll be at least our summative meeting around after-school care before we give our presentation. So if you did have questions at that point or just wanted to come hear some of the stuff we're putting in the presentation, you can come on down. And the following meeting after that will be on the 25th. I hope if any board member, if future board members are here that think about joining PPEC, maybe they might attend one of those meetings. They're always on Wednesdays at 5, usually at the library.
Same with sustainability, too.
So
Looking at Tim back there.
everybody's gonna make their pitch for their committee now.
Yeah.
And you're planning to do a short presentation on 318, correct?
Yes.
Okay, fabulous. I'm filling out that agenda.
I was wondering who's gonna fill out that agenda, because you're not here.
I know.
Hopefully you're gonna do that before you leave.
She's here till the day
That's
before,
right.
and we'll pile it on.
Well, it has to be warned while I'm still
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
Unless
I'll
you
still
decide
be
you want to
working.
make it an emergency meeting. Communications Council.
We
I
have
have
not,
one, can I actually ask
Sorry.
something? So it was something that came up, David and I were chatting about. Did we want to do, I know that the equity committee will be looking at more of the equity study that was done on sports in our PPEC 25th meeting, but is that something we thought, I don't know, last time when I'd heard PPEC would be taking that on, I'm fine with that too, but I wanted to re-bring it up to the board because we will have new board members who've not been involved in any of the discussions. Would it be valuable at that point on the 18th to actually have the overview discussion and then hand it off to PPEC? So we have a little bit more direction than we have right now.
The executive committee discussion with the.
Equity, yeah. I just
Yeah.
labeled it equity.
Yep. That sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
On the 18th?
So on the 18th, you'll do a presentation and we'll do an equity in sports
Yep.
discussion? Okay,
I don't know if that has to be.
yeah, probably not. Okay, sounds good. Communications Council, okay, I'm gonna try, give it a third try. Communications Council.
we have not met since our last meeting, and we don't actually have a plan to meet as of yet. But I did want to update the board on a couple of things. One, I sent 2 releases earlier today that I actually wrote myself, because I realized if we don't have a release in about the annual meeting by Friday, it won't be in the Commons before the meeting. Jamie was sending around a draft release just as a general update regarding the resolution from last time. I know it was already approved, but just to keep an update. And then in the interest of full disclosure, I individually, on my own, with no authority, created 2 Facebook events. One for the information session and one for the annual meeting, just so they're actually on social media as soon as possible.
So if it pleases the board, we're firing him effective. Let this be a lesson to the rest of you. Thank you, Tim. I know there's a lot of pushing out of stuff, so I appreciate it. I know Jamie's working on getting that flyer out too, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did want to update, I forgot to mention that I think this might be incorrect, that David, you had a release to the Commons last Friday, right?
Yeah,
On the resolution?
the board asked me to send it to the ed committees and to the board, our
resolution.
local representatives. Yeah.
Just the resolution, though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we no comment.
Okay, diversity and equity.
So similar to the climate crisis task force, we set up a recurring meeting every month. This month it has to be the second Monday, just because of people's schedules. 4 p.m. on Monday, March 9th at the BAM's conference room. And then after that, every first Monday of the month, it'll be at 4 p.m. at at main office from there on.
So you have not met since our last.
We have on Monday.
And
What's the regular day?
WSESU board, I think we'll skip over because it's been focused solely, am I correct, on the superintendent search, right? Since the last meeting. Right. That brings us to leadership councils. Any reports? Any appointments?
Yes, I have a list of people for the BAM's Leadership Council.
Awesome.
Okay. So Cassandra Holloway, Valerie Annis, Tim Young, Samantha Eagle are all parents or community members for the BAM's Council.
So I would entertain a motion to approve Cassandra Holloway, Samantha Eagle, Tim Young, and
Valerie Annis.
Valerie Annis to the BAM's Leadership Council.
So moved.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the listed members to the BAM's Leadership Council, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? As appear to have it, we're halfway there.
And we have two teachers, Jen Corse, who's a parent and a staff member, and Jessica Montanari, who is a staff member.
Although, I would entertain a motion to appoint Jen Corse and Jennifer Montanari.
Jessica,
sorry, I couldn't read my scrawl. Jessica Montanari to the BAM's Leadership Council. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? Ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it.
Who made the motion and seconded that one?
Yeah, I don't think anyone had-
Oh, I didn't. I was really hurrying. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Second?
I second it.
Thank you, Thomas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. Now the motion carries. And is there any other, we're still
That's
working on
what I
the,
have this week.
awesome, that is terrific. Thank you so much, Keith and company, for getting that
And-
started. This might be a good place to pause and, like, I have found a lot of questions because of the Secretary of State's requirement that we we are meeting open meeting law requirements and that we follow Robert's rules. In the Leadership Council, we have new board members coming up. I was thinking if there was anybody, of doing a few little Robert's Rules light, open meeting light presentations at starting up leadership councils and for new board members. I'd be willing to do that. If there's somebody else that wants to do that, I'd be very happy to let somebody else do that. But just go over the basics of Robert's Rules, the basics of open meeting law, so you've heard it once. And it's so hard to find where everything is in trying to do this job. Maybe just put some materials together. So here it is.
I can help you with that because I've got a little handout about the Robert's Rules for small boards, the distinctions that the town has, and I also have a brief thing that came from the Secretary of State when they revised the old meeting law
And they
years ago.
upped it. So that'd be great. So,
Glad to help. Just let me know when.
so maybe we'll try to keep our ears when they're first starting out, and we can just come for 10 minutes and say, look, this is how you warn a meeting. This is what an agenda looks like. You have to do it 48 hours in advance. You have to,
Yeah, perfect. So why don't you and I be in touch? I'll be in touch with
Okay.
Keith to figure out when they're gonna meet. And any of the other principals who have had meetings established, if you want that to happen, you can just let me know and we can work that out too.
after the budget meeting would be really,
Absolutely.
really
I'm
great
sorry, I don't have
timing
time.
for me. So, excellent, because it's confusing and it changes. Yes.
Ruby McAdoo Putney. So I'm the clerk of the Putney Central School Leadership Council. And I just this year, and I would just encourage you to really lean into having a document rather than,
I have a document actually, so that's.
but having that be something that's self-supporting because you're going to have this every year for all 10 schools.
Yeah.
Because it's a new leadership council every year. And I do think that, I'm sure there's little cheat sheets for the small boards, Robert rules, that you could adapt. And even put like Barb's email address so everybody knows where to send things like that on it.
I actually wrote a draft of it in the first one. I was like, oh, yeah, people don't know this, so yeah, we should get this. And it's, it's a good thing to know. Good thing to know Robert's Rules. So if you go to town meeting or whatever, or are part of any organization. So with that, we have I don't know why there's finances in there, administrative update.
So it's only been 3 school days since we last met, so. So to be quick. We did have excellent feedback for the PD day. Again, thank you to Deb and Paul for the elementary. Steve and Keith worked, and Nancy worked for this complex here, and thank you all very much for that. I do have 2 letters of resignation. So the first one, dear Ms. Holliday, I'm writing this letter to formally inform you of my resignation from teaching pre-kindergarten at Dummerston School at the end of the 2019-2020 academic year. It was not without much deliberation that I have made the decision to discontinue my work here in WSESD at the end of this school year. I am passionate about my work, as we educators do, and have felt welcomed and supported by WSESD during my time in the district. It's been a privilege to work with this district. My hope is that submitting this letter now will allow for an adequate amount of time to find a suitable candidate for the pre-K position in Dummerston. Should you need any additional information from me at this point, please let me know. Thank you for the opportunity to work with the children of Dummerston and grow as an educator. Sincerely, Jill Johnson. So I would ask to accept with regret, extreme regret, actually.
I'm not accepting that. Let's not make that motion. Oh, Ann can't talk.
I'm afraid even if you don't accept it, she's going to leave.
Come on, somebody, cough
I'll
up.
make the
Thank you,
motion
Sean.
to accept with regret Jill Johnson's resignation as the Dummerston pre-K staff.
And we have a second from Ann. Thank you for bailing out the Dummerston reps. The reps who hail from Dummerston, who have to walk through town.
And I'll say, just because I was on the board for a long time with Lynn Corum, is this all within contractual
Yes.
timeline?
Yes, contracts for next year have not gone out. She has not been here long enough for separation benefits. She's not asking for that, so.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to accept with great regret the resignation of Jill Johnson, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it.
And I was just given one minutes ago. And actually it was forwarded on from Steve. Dear Steve, I'm ready to inform you that I will not be returning for the 2019-2020 school year. My husband and I bought a large farm in Maine and my family will be moving. I'm bringing this to your attention now as there is already a hiring team in place and it would be appropriate to let my department have the best possible chance at the replacement for my position. Leaving has not been an easy decision as BUHS has been my home for many years and every school year has been unique in students, initiatives, classes, and focus. It's one of the things that has been awesome about working here. We are always evolving to meet the needs of our students. This is a big transition filled with much excitement as well as sadness. I'm excited to shift my focus more to my family and farm and set up as we embark on this new journey that has been years in planning and preparation. Thank you for being an inspiring leader who is willing to take risks and rally the rest of us forward towards the bigger vision, even when it's scary and fraught with the potential for mistakes. You and the BUHS community will be missed. Diane Skoski Pride. So I would ask that you accept with regret Diane's.
I'd entertain a motion to accept with regret the resignation.
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Thomas. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the motion to accept the resignation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? The motion carries.
The rest of mine, I will talk with you under the coronavirus stuff. Got lots there.
Excellent. You're just filled with good news.
Great news tonight.
Thought I'd have a little fun in my last regular meeting. So we have already discussed the academy project, so we're moving on to item B, which is next week's budget info session and how that's going to go. Hopefully I won't have to call a meeting for anything, but you never know, so I will keep you posted. It would be great to have all the members of the finance committee there who are probably the best, the most familiar with the budget. We need a quorum, so if you can't make it that night, let me know, because I know it's not a regularly scheduled night. There is childcare available, so you can bring your children. And then I'm not sure if the board has, I figured we would just go through, have copies of the budget, give an overview, answer questions. Anybody want to do like a song and a dance or some sort of, art project to the budget or anything to supplement learners?
Do we have, Tim mentioned the press releases going out. Do we have things going out through the school newsletters and websites, and is it a full court press in terms of getting that out? I know we
Also,
mailed, we
sent
already
them in.
mailed it out.
Everybody
yeah,
got
but-
the postcard. We can certainly put reminders in newsletters and.
It's, people aren't in the habit, and of course surrounding towns think it's all over.
Yeah.
Town meeting's done.
I should add that I actually wrote those 2 press releases in part because I got an email from Barb saying, what should we do? Should I pay for ads? I was like, that's when they have it, so you don't have to pay for ads.
Yeah.
So,
Excellent. And I think, when Jamie and Barb do it, doesn't it go to all the principals and stuff? So it could go on the newsletter, so it's going that direction, so.
Usually Thursday is the newsletter day, so the info meeting might be a little.
Too late.
it's ready to go.
It's ready to go, okay, yeah.
Awesome.
But definitely the 17th.
Yeah.
You
Could you just state your name?
I'm sorry, Tara Castine Putney. You mentioned postcards had gone out
Mhm.
to everyone.
Mhm.
Weeks
When?
ago. Weeks ago.
I never got one. Either of these two from Putney. So I would like to have a review of that process to make sure that people in the towns actually have received your postcards.
They go to, it's one of those mailers that gets put into every single post box and every single mailbox, so I
I
don't know.
got
should
one,
check
but
out
it
the
was,
Putney
it
PO.
was like kind of stuffed in with the ads that we usually just, put in
Yeah.
recycling.
Yeah, it does
Yeah,
go
you
in
should-
that, it does go in that junk mail stuff, so I know that my husband, it came in his box in his junk mail, and he pulled it out, but it may have gone to people's junk mail, because that's the cheap way to mail. But we got it at home and at work, so I know 05346 in some fashion was working, and I know 05302 in some fashion was working, so.
So it's not anything that we do, it's whatever the post office does, so you'll need to check in with your post office, I guess, on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry you didn't get it. I hope it wasn't a rampant problem, yes.
Ruby, Matthew Putney. Will the budget info session be recorded by BCTV?
So the only additional factor, since nobody seems to want give a musical presentation of the budget, which is really fun, the only other additional piece of, kind of assessment data that would be available to the public is a gift arrived, which I shared with all of you, which was the Brattleboro Town Finance Committee's review of the budget. And it's been something that has been done, it's appointed by the select board, a group of volunteers who have reviewed the Brattleboro Town School Board budget and the BUHS budget independently and given a recommendation. So even though we are a different district now, they went ahead and did it. And I forwarded to all of you, get rid of that because that wasn't the final copy, so you can delete that. And when the final copy comes through, because our budget changes like $5 one way or the other, and then that throws everything off. And so Franz Reichman, who's the chair of that group, is doing the final touches on it, so we should have it in the next day or two. We spoke at Finance Committee about having copies of that available to the public at the budget info session and the annual meeting. And we agreed that that would be a good idea to recommend to the board. Would that be a fair way to say what I said, what we all agreed? So if that is acceptable to the board as a whole, I would entertain a motion to have copies made and included. Did you want to speak to
Well,
that?
it'll be online also.
Yes, it'll be online too. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And I think that he said, I could be wrong, but I think he said that it's at the town rep meeting that they're actually appointed, is that correct?
I think that's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, you had said the select board.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Maybe didn't.
Well, yeah, the representative town meeting created the finance committee to do those reports, and I think that Franz's point to talking to us is that it's a representative town meeting, Brattleboro representative town meeting function, and so we might want to get people from the communities that, rather than Brattleboro people telling everybody what's wrong with their budget, might we get some contributions from the surrounding towns about the insight in the budget. If we wanted to have a report like that went to the public. If we didn't want to have one, then we wouldn't do anything.
So
We have to decide that at some point.
that has to be decided. It doesn't have to be decided because we have it now, and we've all agreed it's very helpful to have now. And, I didn't want to bury the lead in case you didn't read it. The Brattleboro Town Finance Committee recommended approval and passing of our budget. So that might change how you feel about including the information if you're voting on the board. So I would entertain a motion to ask central office to make copies of the final Brattleboro Town Finance Committee recommendation to be available for the budget meeting and the annual meeting. Was that your motion, Sean?
Sure.
Thank you, Sean, for the
And I also
motion.
want to say something after.
Oh, okay. Is there, well, that we can do it during discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We're giving it to Emily. Tom's been a big second. Any discussion, Sean?
I could say it after we vote.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? The ayes appear to have it, the ayes do have it, and the motion carries. Yes, sir.
This is just in terms of voter awareness. Kristina did this little fold out, which maybe a lot of you already have, a trifold. And I have to say that she's amazing, as we all know, but it's really, really helpful. So these might be good to have available at the,
Yes, we should.
on the 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even the 17th, well, no, the
Yeah,
17th,
both.
just the 10th. So I have 3 if anybody wants a copy.
I have a stack of about 10 or 15.
See me afterwards.
Oh, good.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a trifold for understanding your education tax, that basically Kristina put together. And it's extremely informative, very, very clear, well stated, so everybody can understand what Frank knows already.
Is that something that would be included in the presentation? Because maybe it could be a supplement that's just projective. Because it's
Well, it's a trifold.
It wouldn't really
Oh,
work on the
wouldn't project.
presentation. I
Yeah.
think it was, the intent of it was so that people who were like, where does this number come from, could maybe get some guidance to that, but also a call to action on the legislature hearing about the weighting study, and you need to understand education financing to get a little understanding of that. So I tried to do 2 things in one trifold, and it takes a village, because I was in the guidance office of BUHS, and Selena Romo walked by and said, hey, we've got this trifold, I'll send it to you. So I modified it for ripped it apart and said, that's a great idea. Sean backed me up and did the editing, and then Frank Monday morning in a scramble corrected where my decimals were from a previous revision. So, and then Barb got, the best thanks to Barb. That was not, the photocopy was not cooperating, so.
Plus, our intention was not for Barb to print them out and fold them.
Well, it was to
And
print.
she said, oh, I can get it done by 4, but
I wondered why she didn't get any word on that. Barb, don't watch this. That's it for me.
Well, we really appreciate her taking care of that, and we certainly didn't mean to have her, if she could print them, because on my inkjet, I would still be printing now. So I really appreciate using a high-speed, inexpensive copier, but, so we should maybe ask to get, I don't want to do that. I could go to Staples and just pay for it myself. I'm not asking Barb to print more of those, because we'll make sure we come up with another 100 of those suckers to have available, so.
Out of the
David-
surplus of the Guilford Town Office, so they're available in Guilford.
Excellent. So we're kind of all set with the budget info, and I'll work on making sure I'm good with that. You're bringing the copies of the town, or somebody from Central will bring the, for Franz's list.
Once we
And
have the final, Franz is gonna fix up
Yeah.
with your suggestions.
do we have extra copies of or a lot of copies of the annual report?
We have a few here tonight.
Well, I wanted to get like about 50 of them. The Brattleboro town budget meeting is next Wednesday night, and that would be a
Good time to have this.
good opportunity to hand them out.
Can you stop it at some point?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you had them. Yeah, I thought so. Thank you.
yes, Jody.
Jody Normando Dummerston. I don't recall that you talked about some of the things that we talked about from the last meeting about having photographs of where they go to the information meeting, because, I mean, I've lived here forever. I graduated from the high school, but things have changed. I had no idea where to go to the BAM's building. And is that going to happen?
I don't know how feasible it is to stick those into like one of these press releases for a website and newsletters.
Or sandwich boards out there?
Certainly, I think sandwich boards is
Because last time people got locked out, they didn't know which door to go to, it was.
Well, I think Jamie was part of that request, and Jamie's on the Communications Council pushing these things out, so we should maybe just remind Jamie.
Kristina?
Yeah.
Jamie and I have sandwich
I'm sorry, could
boards.
you just-
I'm sorry, Ellen Strong Putney. Jamie and I are going to be bringing, at the very least, sandwich boards that we're taking from the Putney Library. We have permission, so at least we'll have some physical signage. So, and we'll keep working on the other piece.
Or an address, so they know where to go.
Address,
with
we can put
GPS.
photo in social media because we can control that, and then sign.
Yes.
I should note the addresses are on all the press releases, but obviously it doesn't help if there are multiple doors.
Thanks, Dave.
Moving on from that, because we have the fabulous Carrie Amadon here, who chairs the SU board, would you be willing to favor us, if it's okay with the board, that we ask her to update us on the superintendent search?
Sure. Today is Wednesday? Okay, so tomorrow we end the application process for superintendents to apply. And then on Friday, we should be choosing, or Dawn will be choosing the search committees. And we are hoping to have the first round of the first committee to review all the applications next Monday. And then we'll be scheduling interviews. So things are going along quite well. And again, thanks to the fabulous Barb for continually answering my emails. When I say eek, I forgot to ask for, and she gets it done. So things are moving quickly, which is good.
Would you be able to just briefly outline the process so that people are aware of the process, you know, those two committees and the board, and just so board members coming on, the selection?
So we're gonna have two separate committees. The first is going to be, I might be doing the math in my head badly, about 10 people. So it'll be 2 administrators, 2 teachers, 2 support staff, 2 or so parents. There are no board members involved. So it's a group of teachers, administrators, parents, community members who will be reviewing all of the applications. And then they will be making a recommendation as to who should be interviewed. At that point, we will establish a second committee, again, similar makeup, so administrators, teachers, support staff, parents, taxpayers, community members,
Students
as well as students. So we're gonna add 2 students to that. They will be performing the interviews. And again, no board members involved in that. That group will then recommend to the board 1, 2, 3 people for the board to interview. So the board is not involved at all in winnowing things down. We're just going to be given what we hope is the cream of the crop based on the recommendations of the key stakeholders.
I did not get the impression that one for the board to
I think it's gonna be multiples.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Don was pretty clear about, give us choices, give us a couple.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
And then there was the wild card option too, the Don Collins Choice Award.
But Don has a lot of, I'm not messing with Don.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But he, if there's a candidate that he feels should go into the next round, he reserves the right to.
he reserves
move
the
a
right
candidate
to add
forward.
someone to the committees. Once we get all of the recommendations as to who should be on the committees, he reserves the right to say, you're missing this person. And he reserves the right to read all the applications and say, you know what, this person should move along to the next. So.
How many applications have there been?
I did ask this question because I've been asked this a lot, and I was like, Don, can I tell people? And he said, make it sort of like that. So we're over 12, which I thought was
It's a goodly number.
a good
We
number.
should be very happy with that.
Yeah, and it's not closed yet, so.
Tim?
Tim Macy, Brattleboro. I tried to find the job description online? Where is it?
It's on, well, let's see, it's on Indeed, it's on School Spring, it's on Education Week, it's on Top School Jobs, and it's on the main website. So if you go to the SU website and you look under, I should be able to tell you this, but usually there is something for employment. So SU employment, let's hope I can find it quickly. Yeah, if you go to employment, and then look under the SU, so it's on there. But we advertised as widely as we possibly could. But also if you go to School Spring, you'll see it there, and that's got the entire process where you can apply online.
School Spring?
School Spring.
Oh, thanks.
So.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Jody.
Jody Normandeau Dummerston. Is it possible to tell if there's any in-house candidates? Or is
I'm actually not looking at them, so I don't really know. Because I figured Dawn basically said, hands off, and I said, cool. So I pretty much look at the number and say, yay. But as far as who they are, where they're from.
And does everybody know who Dawn is?
Oh, Dawn Collins is the consultant that we hired to help us walk through this process. So Dawn was a long-term superintendent himself in Vermont. He's been a principal, he was a state senator. He chaired Senate Ed. He's been a parent. He pretty much hits every stakeholder category that we're having on this board. So.
School board, 15-year school board member, teacher as well. So teacher, principal, superintendent, school board member.
Parent.
So grandparent. So I think he.
And the SBA, right?
He's a lovely, the SBA member. Let me just say it thusly. He's, as I think I said in an earlier meeting, Jody, he's the one person that everybody has managed to like, even when they don't agree with him, which is quite a skill indeed. So
He's a talented man.
He's a talented man, and he brings a lot of
charming
experience.
Can we hire him?
Thank you so much, Carrie, for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? Excellent. It was nice because he met with teachers before we hired him, he met with administrators before we hired him, he met with other school staff before we hired him, met with the board. So it's been a very, it's taken a little longer than we thought, but we have left no thoughts unturned in all this. So
It's taken longer, but we're on schedule.
True.
The schedule that we set in the beginning, we're making
looking
it.
for
Yeah.
March.
because he is like, nope, we're doing this. It was like music to my ears. Like, let's get the show on the road and not lose momentum. So I'm very happy. Thank you, Carrie. Oh, moving on to, speaking of superintendents, moving on to the font of good news, Lyle Holiday.
I have spent hours, literally hours on this. So, COVID-19, novel coronavirus, also known as, the information is changing as we are sitting here. I have asked a couple of school nurses to keep up with it, to make sure that they keep me informed. But the best information is that we have to be following the CDC guidelines and the Department of Health guidelines. As we know from the Vermont Department of Health, it's still unknown as to how impactful it's going to be. Right now, the best information that we've been given is that we need to ensure good hygiene, hand washing, keeping students and adults, so teachers, paras, custodians, parents, home until they've been fever-free for 24 hours without the use of medication. And that all went home in a letter that I sent out. I've been in touch with Peter Elwell and Chief Bukasi from the Brattleboro Fire Department to ensure that we are all working on a coordinated response here in the greater area. And also tomorrow evening, I'm at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital for a session with the hospital chief of staff on what the regional response will be if it hits here. Of course, we have school trips. It's hard to know what's going to be going on in April. At this point, Costa Rica and Belize seem to be fine. Those trips are probably a go, but again, things are changing every day. Germany, there are higher number of cases. It seems like it really is going to depend on where in Germany our students are going. Steve and I have been in conversation about this. He's in conversation with the trip leaders. It's still a few weeks away, but we will need to start to make a decision in another couple of weeks. As yet, there's no guidance on school closures. If there is a recommendation, then I would be in touch with, obviously, with the board, and that will also come to me from the Agency of Education. I am making a plea to all of you, if you've traveled to an area that is known to have cases of COVID-19, to contact the Department of Health. If you need help contacting the Department of Health, contact your school nurse, and the school nurse at the school your child attends will help you with that. So, one more thing, I did today ask principals to check in with custodians to ensure, and this was actually information that came today, this afternoon, to ensure that high-touch areas are frequently cleaned throughout the day. Door handles, faucets, areas where you just put your hands, railings, that type of thing. So I'm sure custodians aren't going to be happy to add that to their load, but right now that's what we need to have done. So that's what I know as of right now.
Laura, I have a question. What about kids who are immunosuppressed?
Their parents need to be talking with the school nurse, and then they'll put them in touch with the Vermont Department of Health. Everything is an individualized basis right now.
Okay.
Because
in listening to the interview that they gave, they said that the state isn't charging for the testing.
I can't answer any
It was on
questions about
Dicker.
it. Yeah,
Anybody wants to go back and watch it.
also don't.
So,
The whole testing thing has been all up in the air.
Yeah, I can't respond to anything.
Any other board questions? Kelly?
Yeah, I'm wondering, in the event that there is a school closure, hopefully that doesn't happen, but how will parents or people in the community become aware of that?
We use School Messenger just like we would use for a snow day. But again, I would be making sure that all the board knows, and again, my guess is if there are school closures here, it's probably going to be school closures around the state. We're not going to be an isolated, so we'll be getting advice through the Agency of Education, through the Vermont Department of Health on, yes, it's time. That generally, just like the flu, if we had over 50% of our students out and our teachers out with the flu, we would likely close. We did that actually in Guilford a couple of years ago, where we had huge numbers of people out with the flu. We couldn't staff because of the number of teachers, so we had to close for a couple of days. It would be the same type of thing.
And because we inhabit a corner of Vermont here, is there coordination between the Vermont Department of Health and New Hampshire? I mean, do we have anybody who lives over in New Hampshire, who has kids in the school, that's going to let us know what's going on? Just 'cause,
New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
and Massachusetts as well. Yeah, I was going to say that as well. Like, is there?
I can ask the school nurses.
Because if it's happening in Keene, that's far more relevant to us than if it happened in Target in Keene. It's far more relevant than if it happened at U32 or something in Montpelier. So.
I have a question. Do we have any contingency plan for, say there's a long-term, say there's a big outbreak and kids have to stay home for a long time. Do we have any sort of contingency to let them not fall behind in their classes?
That will be easier at the middle high school because all those students do have Chromebooks and are connected. Elementary, it's going to be much more difficult, and we do not yet have that. Not next week, the week after, I meet with superintendents, and that's one of the things that we'll be talking about. So what would contingency plans?
But middle school and up, they would be able to
They
get some
should
lessons?
be able to, yeah.
Okay.
New territory.
Well, thank you, Lyle. I appreciate you letting everybody know. And I'm wondering if it might make sense to do another push about not sending kids to school that are sick, and just keep reminding us. I've noticed it's on a bunch of the school websites, but just, because I know the temptation is there, you gotta go to work.
And to teachers, maybe even more so than the parents, as teachers don't want to not come to work. It's more work when you don't come than when you do.
It is, you're right. Yeah.
You
It's one of
drag
the
yourself
things,
in, but
I meet with all principals on Friday, and that is on our agenda, so making sure that we're keeping regular updates, and nurses are regularly updating both us. The school nurse at Putney did a really nice informational thing for the staff at Putney, and making sure that we're keeping parents informed as well. So, trying to stay on top of it. But
Yeah, that's a full-time job, but thank you
it
for.
has been a full-time job.
Well, I knew you were constantly keeping up with this. I appreciate you updating the board and giving people an opportunity who watch VCTV to be reminded as well. Use good caution and wash your hands.
Stay home when you're sick.
Keeping with the good news, as I mentioned before, they're keeping with fun things to hear about. That first copy was sent out with a draft. I got comments back from Sean. Thank you, Sean. My goal would be to get this in a place that it is kind of ready to go out for legal review by changeovers, so that or even maybe before, while we still have Tim Morris on board. So because it's helpful, I find it cost efficient to have a lawyer talk to a lawyer and then explain it all to me what happened. So, though you're not practicing in the state of Vermont, you're acting as or the school board's attorney. He's just somebody who knows exactly what they said. He's a good translator. So, if you could send comments to anybody on the policy committee, we can work on getting a next level policy together and hopefully get this in front of a lawyer sooner versus later, so we can be one of the first states to have this, which will be good. Also, sorry, Sean.
In terms of a timeline, you were thinking on the 18th possibly, or?
Which I'd love to have it. Sorry?
I mean, well, all we have is tonight, then the 10th was the budget, and we're not gonna do it then.
Well, I think the committee could meet and consolidate comments and figure out what makes sense with comments, and then we could have it either and take it, send it off to the attorney so we could get feedback before half of this policy and amendment committee is gone, but at least it's in a stage where you can go to the next phase with this and make sure procedures and everything else that goes with this, and however the process is going to carry forward. But there's a solid document so that all this thought we put into it over all this time isn't, doesn't land dead in the water. It was my goal. I just want to tidy up before I go. That's what it is.
It's likely that the whole board is going to have the same conversation that we had in the committee as well, and probably the community too. But at least we'll have answers to all of the questions that we're trying to.
And it's a starting point for discussion as well, because you see something on paper versus having to think of everything, and we've spent a long time thinking of everything. So whatever we can do to kind of put that is my goal.
In terms of a timeline, though, it probably realistically would be April 1st.
No, I think you're probably right before the board would see it, I meant like the 18th or after, but I'm just looking at that as a hard stop for half the committee, or 2/5 of the committee.
And as long as I'm right there, I forgot to say that the next finance committee meeting will be April 1st at 5 o'clock.
That'll be, oh darn.
April Fool's Day Finance.
April Fool's Day Finance Committee. Why am I writing that down? So I omitted E, but if you got a hard copy, I underscored instead of crossing out. So we're not reviewing the annually required updates from the superintendent to the board because we decided to push that to the next board. Yes, sorry.
I have a question about the Ruby Mackey from Putney. I am wondering how you are communicating, whether it's in draft form or even in the final, like the last reading, to the public about your policies.
They show up on on the website, like it will be on the agenda, it'll be warned 10 days before a policy would be adopted. We'd be a long way from adopting that policy at this point. But 10 days before any policy, we'll be discussing it and we'll say, okay, we're going to be ready to warn it on such a day. And it has to be 10 days before the final adoption. So the policy is attached to the agenda in its final form. There may be remove a semicolon in your final reading, but pretty much you have to be ready to go. So it's warned for 10 days before any policy is adopted. And it's discussed and approved at the full board level.
I guess I would just ask that just if you could review. I feel like there haven't been. I don't know if maybe you have not adopted any policies in the last number of months, but it hasn't been appearing in the same way that you're describing, which it used to. And also just looking back, there used to be first reading presentations of first readings as well. And so I just wanted to understand what the goal was in terms of, because it's, that policy in particular is like brand new. And it'd be an interesting thing to understand what you're going through when you're talking about.
So I know that every policy we warned has been warned 10 days in advance because I've checked every single one because I'm chair of policy. So it may not have been easy to find or something because I think our website's sometimes challenging to navigate and sometimes the policies have come at an SU level. So if you didn't pull up the SU agenda versus the SD agenda, so that might be at issue. But it's always in a live line underneath the warning. So you also may have thought it was something totally different, but it's sort of indented and underneath. So, because I've always checked to make sure because it's a statutory requirement. We had a practice of doing a first read and then a second read, and it turns out the statute is you need a 10-day warning. So just something you stumble upon when you read Title 16 sometimes. And you go, oh, wow, that's not right. So we have adopted our format to reflect statutory requirements that we need a 10-day warning. So that's how we've done it. There's usually one or two discussions at the board level. Some things are just, I will say the only time that was not true was when we wholesale approved all the ones we needed for the start of school. And it's like, we're just taking them, we can't do anything with them, but they have to say the district and they have to apply to the schools that we're working here. But other than that, we have chunked through. When we got into budget, we did not. Policy, it's the same cast of characters on budget that were on policy, and we spent a lot of time on the amendments. So policy was a little burnt out, and we were working on budget. So we took a couple months off, and now we're back in swinging at policies and trying to get through them. So, would that be a fair assessment of our process, fellow policy committee members? So I wanted to just get a touch base if people had feedback from town meeting, any leadership, how'd it go? We got different communities yes, Sean.
The Leadership Council in Guilford made a really nice presentation. John was on the stage with them, and they had a really good little slideshow and a description of every class in the school, and it was very well received. The only downside is that there wasn't any place to put it within the confines of the meeting. I thought it was going to be under business, which would have been nice, because we lost some precipitation of the town members. But I think all in all, it was a very well done Leadership Council presentation, especially with the slideshow. Somebody put a lot of time into that. So I thought it was really good.
So Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about Putney here?
Well, I'm not sure I have that much to say. I ran into a similar thing where the town manager had suggested I come and say a few words, and I responded that all I could really say was to promote the annual meeting and maybe talk about factual things we've done, but nothing moving forward because I won't be on the board in part, and also due to the board rules. And then it turned out that the moderator, rightly I think, said this isn't town business, so it shouldn't be under other business. So it got pushed to after the meeting, people were starting to leave, and then the principal, her pelletier, got up and gave a presentation in which he talked about the annual meeting, et cetera, and I thought there wasn't much purpose for me addressing the crowd beyond that, and it was thinning out greatly at that point.
Yeah, Sean?
I would say, I think next year what I'll do is, because we had Becca Balin and Sarah Coffey were there and gave a nice presentation on the legislature, and I was able to take this and ask them specific questions about the WIG study on 2019, and they had a nice response, both of them, so they're really well aware of that. But I think what I should have done was ask to have a WSESD presentation right after them, which would have been within the town meeting, because it would be the same as Becca and Sarah. So I think next year, that's what I'll ask for.
We should add that there was a motion at Putney's town meeting to invite a representative from the SD board for next year's meeting, but then ultimately it was amended to make it a leadership council member.
Let me just, and so in Dummerston, our leadership council has had a few meetings, but I think a full presentation, whereas Guilford had, so many board members and has been going for a long time, so I don't think it was quite ready for prime time that way. I did a 5-minute, this is when it's happening, this is what's going on. 5 minutes max presentation. I got to do it under the business, so hopefully they don't talk. But the other thing was it was short and sweet. So our moderator called on me first so that everybody hadn't left, because you could see people leaving. So it was 3 o'clock, so. Which it used to be. You used to be able to do 2 municipalities by 3 o'clock. So, it's like a gas. It will expand to fill whatever time you have. And so, God, you all know science. Excellent. So that might be an interesting path. I know one town in Vermont held a meeting at 9:30 of the board and did their presentation early. So families who wanted to do that. So that might be an option going forward. And that didn't seem to ruffle feathers in that community. But we're dealing with different moderators, different select boards, different communities. So I think if we go gently and are, trying to find a way to make it work, something will be better next year. So.
Yeah, it was a little awkward at Guilford because I was actually told that I would have a time to speak, but then when it came right down to it, nobody corralled that moment. So what I did is everybody was standing up to leave. I jumped right up to the podium, went to the mic, and said, "Sit down, I have something else to say." And people reluctantly sat back down and listened to my little rap for 5 minutes. So.
Oh, and I don't know when the legislators came to see you, but I got 4 legislators with my waiting study. Jody Normandos spoke up when the legislators were there, loud and clear, and asked them to support it in no uncertain terms. So they got at least a triple barrel because they were trying to, everybody in town cleared away. I was carrying a piece of paper and I'm like, don't mess with me, I'm getting to that legislator. So they got an earful in the waiting study from a bunch of people face to face, which is great.
Yeah, the legislature both said that it was very unlikely that there'd be state money for projects within the schools, within the confines of the timeline that we need to make the changes to the academy. So that was a little dubious.
Yeah.
But they were not, they were definitely interested in the weighted study. So that would make a big difference.
Well, I think that's something, and Becca felt very strongly about it and was really, I think there's some will on the Senate side. So I had a good, we shall see, but at least I think it was helpful, and a lot of people were writing down, how to contact. So hopefully we'll get a little more push. And any other board members have any updates?
Liz Adams Putney. So one of our select board people is going to bring it before the select board to have a school piece at the very beginning of town meeting. And I'm pretty sure they'll do it. I was really struck by how few people actually showed up at town meeting. And I think that's related to not having a school board there and that interaction. So that's something that our leadership council can work on, outreach to the community, and but I'm pretty sure Laura will get it through, that we get to talk first. You know, it won't be a big, long thing, but that way people won't leave, or we won't have to wait until there's like 15 people left there.
I think we'll work it out if we're thoughtful with, our requests and just think about how long anybody wants to be there. So it's a learning process. And then for Brattleboro, it's the twain shall not meet. So, there's an advantage in the small towns there for that opportunity that we'll have to think about going forward. How does that happen in Brattleboro? Because there is no mechanism now for that at all in Brattleboro. So let me call in Sean first.
I would just like to interject, Guilford did have a very robust turnout for the town meeting. And we're definitely not on life support in Guilford.
Good to hear.
Well, you had something to give.
So, Jody?
I just want to add to what you said. We were very fortunate. We had our 2 senators there and we had our 2 representatives there. I spoke with one of the senators and one of the reps after the meeting. I spoke during the meeting, but the rep said this is going to be, and actually emailed me just yesterday and said this is going to be a long session. I mean, it's going to take a long time to put this together, which was kind of what Jeff Francis had said. The senator said, we've got to get on this. So it remains to be seen what would happen. What I wanted to say at the beginning of the meeting to put in here is that I also ended up counting ballots at the end of the meeting. And it was very obvious and very frustrating that people, after all the letters, the Facebooks, the whatever, still did not understand that they could vote for everything. And I think what it did, because it said like, let's see, the competition was in Brattleboro and Putney, so it said blah, 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 and it said Brattleboro and blah, 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 and it said Putney. Those 2 sessions were blank, and probably half of the ballots. And we had almost 800 voters. So I think because of the presidential stuff. So if the board can somehow figure out how to get to them and maybe get to them the day of the vote, that they can vote for everybody. I don't know, because it was frustrating to see that.
It's also on the bottom.
So I'm also wondering.
It was on the very bottom.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think the leadership council is gonna have to be the structure to do that, because we don't have, other than the media, there's really nothing we can do. But I think if it just, when people get used to it, hopefully they will. I'm surprised that many people didn't vote. It's really unfortunate. But I also can understand it, because a lot of people said to me, I don't know who to vote for. Who are these people?
But it was way down the bottom too. You have to go all the way down.
So
I mean,
we'll
I
learn
sent
next
that
year.
stuff out,
Yeah.
and there was all kinds of stuff in the paper and everywhere else, and people just didn't pick up on it.
Bigger fonts. Yes,
Ruby McAdoo, Putney. My experience at Putney, I actually thought that it was fairly robust as well, but as was mentioned, we had very few people for the final portion. But the reason I'm bringing this up is that I feel like it's really interesting to hear all of the different towns' meetings. I only have Putney's experience, and I would really like to, I don't think there has to be complete uniformity in what the presentations look like, but I think having some recommendation or standard that's promoted or encouraged by the board would be good. And I think in the same way that Guilford came to naturally the idea of placing a school section around the time of when you have your legislators come, that's where Putney landed, and I think that's a good recommendation. With the Leadership Council in Putney, multiple of us were told by our town clerk and our town select board to do a certain thing, and we did those things, and we got shot down by the moderator both times. And so there was a lot of frustration around that. It would have been, I think if there was a push from the school board to say, hey, this is what we like, that would make it easier for the Leadership Council and even the individual school board members or the principal to insert themselves in that way.
It's an interesting thought, and so some boards might react one way to another, so that might be helpful in some situations and less helpful in others. So I think it's something to kind of feel our way through. And I think, you know, in my case, it worked to have the, you know, could we, and it'll be quick, and that really worked. And it would be different if we were looking for a half an hour because everybody was getting tired. And so I think having some constraints on it, because different communities are going to have different interest levels, and then poor Brattleboro's got nothing. So we'll have to figure out your town meeting, date, for elections and things. But something for next year. If we did everything this year, it'd be so boring for you, the rest of you. So with that, I would like to ask.
Before we do that, I just got a text from Keith. Is there a way you want BAM set up for the informational meeting next week so that he can make sure that it's ready for us?
He's right here.
He's right here. Can we talk about Keith
I think how you had it for the amendment thing was great. So if we had handouts, that was nice to have the projector there.
I don't remember what.
So we had a bunch of chairs out, and then there was a projector, and so we could just kind of speak to the amendments, and so if we could have a projector so that if people want to go over a page of the budget, we could maybe get that up so that we can all see what we're doing. I think that's probably all we need, right?
So just like a table for the board up front and then just.
Sure, yeah.
Just seating.
Just seating.
50?
10?
Well,
you know, I'd
that's the
say that.
reality usually, but-
What, like 80 last year, isn't it?
No, just for the
Oh, for the
information
information.
center.
Oh, God, yeah.
20.
I'm gonna say 20, but if we could have a way to find another 20
There are
seats.
plenty of chairs.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're stacked in the back. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments on non-agenda items?
Ruby Matthew from Putney. Jamie Contois from Putney could not be here, and so she texted me to and let the board know that she's sending you an email that's specifically related to some kind of a press release about the pupil waiting study hearing. That I think that there's fairly quick turnaround in action because the hearing is on March 11th. So I know that's been referenced before, but she asked me to tell you, so I'm telling you.
And we empowered the Communications Council to do that with the approval of Ann and I, so when that final thing comes through, we're good. But thank you, Jamie. If you have a thought about it, call either, contact someone in the Communications Council or Ann or I. Being that, I would move that the board moves into executive session under 1 VSA 313 A1A, to discuss a contractual matter, 1313 A7, student matter, and 1313 A1F, a legal matter. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of moving into executive session as listed, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays or abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. We will move into executive session in the Cusick room.
Isn't it too early?